Welcome to the e-commerce growth show, brought to you by Segmentify.
So hey everyone, this is Carlos again for another episode of the e-commerce growth show. We're kicking it off today in the Netherlands, and I'm still jet lagged from my trip from Brazil. We have the pleasure of bringing Chris out. Chris, every show I do, I have the same question, whether it's in Portuguese, Romanian. I don't speak Romanian, just a joke. English. I ask for the big picture. We're kicking it off in the Netherlands. So you're our very first guest, and yeah, man, just drop the bomb. Let us know about your story, who you are, how did you come about, becoming a growth hacker? And what's the big picture?
Yeah, thanks, Carlos. Well, it's great to be here. I've already seen a lot about Segmentify and the e-commerce growth show. I also did a show more in Eastern Europe with some of your team, so that was also cool to do. I think my story is can be told in a long form and in the short form. But the short form is that I was trained as an auditor at KPMG. Hated my job so much that I decided to quit after 1 year, and then got into entrepreneurship, where I did everything wrong, had my first startup completely failed, lost more than 200K, got into some legal contracts where if I look back 5 years after, I was like, that wasn't the smartest thing to do, but I was still young and naive. But along the way, you learn, and I was really passionate about following online courses, reading a lot of books, listening to podcasts. And I stumbled my way into the world of growth hacking. So I started an agency in 2014 with two other guys. And we've been pretty successfully growing that agency to one of the top agencies worldwide in the growth hacking sphere. And last year, I sold my shares in that agency. And I'm currently in the process of writing a new book on growth with a new method, the wallet method, on how you can quickly monetize your biggest business opportunity. And next to that, I'm teaching at different business schools and helping clients around the world to basically grow their businesses and turn all their opportunities into more revenue. And that was the short story.
All right, yeah, very cool, Chris. Chris, this show we are usually, I'm leading this show in, as I said, in Brazil, North America. You're the first growth hacker that I'm interviewing. Most of our, let's say, our audience is, the C-level and they're retailers, right? Or some thought leaders in the US. But what is the single biggest challenge that you see today for, I think, companies out there when it comes to marketing? When it comes to, we hear a lot about the future. I want to pick your brain also on the future conversational marketing as well. But what is the biggest what is the single biggest challenge today that you see in terms of growth and marketing? Can you comment a bit on it?
Yeah, definitely, and especially from an executive perspective. And I was teaching last week an executive MBA over here in the Netherlands. I think the biggest problem or challenge that they have is the disconnection between their strategy and the execution of the teams in a highly changing world. So the world of setting out a strategy for the next 5 years and then tell to teams, do this, that's a really tough thing to do. And the transformation that they need to make is in this new world to run quickly experiments to see what works and what doesn't. And out of that, really understand why things work and then connect that back to the C-level. And I think that the biggest challenge is that C-level or executive level tends to have this ivory tower where they make great plans, and teams don't speak the language of those executives to show what's actually happening on the ground. And what I basically want to do with my new book is to not bridge that gap, but to completely remove that gap and make sure that strategy, execution, and especially high tempo reinventions are actually enabled. Because I think in this new world, the faster you can adapt to new opportunities, the more chances you have to monetize those. And it's the fastest one that will win in this new area.
Nice. So I wanna dig a little deeper into what you're saying, because if there is a disconnect, right, between like people who are in the trenches and the C-suite who are just doing the plans, and I don't think it's always like that, but I get what you're saying. Can you comment a little bit on the disconnect? Is it I don't know, like I follow a guy called Dave Gerhardt, and he's in the US, and Chris Walker as well. They're always talking about, Chris always talking about Facebook. I think it's great, and performance marketing, and Dave is always mostly talking about copywriting. And a CEO, he says a CEO who doesn't get marketing is you shouldn't work for a guy like that, right? But can you comment a bit more on the disconnect, and what do you see, like in terms of challenges, and could you name just a few?
Yeah. So I think from an executive perspective, you set out a strategy, and you're more worried about like the valuation of your company, especially if you're the owner. You speak in terms of valuation, top line revenue, EBITDA, these type of things. And you want to make sure that the things that the team do actually make impact. But to make impact, the teams need to understand what impact actually means. And this is something that I see in a lot of teams, is that they're going to run an experiment, for example, which in a lot of cases isn't set up in the right way. But then I ask them, okay, if this experiment would work, what would be the potential upside? How would it contribute to the goals of the company? And they have a lot of difficulties on articulating that. So they know, okay, we could increase the conversion rate with 1%, or the bounce rate will be reduced with 10%. But these are not the things that executives care about. They care about valuation, lifetime value of customers, recurring revenue, but also how is the business model potentially going to be disrupted in the near future, and how are we preparing for that? So it's a conversation that is held on different levels. Well, I think that if you put those team in place and let them do experiments on the big strategic things that you want to do, and you really understand your portfolio of assets and where the big chances are, I think that running those experiments can really close that gap and make sure that those executives get the right feedback based on what the teams are doing.
Got it. If we talk about your previous book, and can you comment a little bit on because if I go on your website here, and I believe you're changing things, you're talking about enabling extreme revenue growth, right? That has to do with your previous book. And can you we'll get to the new book, and because I think it's the main part of this conversation as well. But can you talk a little bit about your previous book, and what are the growth levers that any company should focus on?
Yeah. So I think
I will have to. Lee, please carry on, because I have one thing very important here. It's okay. It's real quick. I need to take this one.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Adapt on it, Chris. So please tell us more about the main part about your first book, and also what's I think really interesting, because I know growth hacking like for quite a while. I worked with a lot of growth hackers before. What's the biggest difference also between your first book and the upcoming book, Chris?
Yeah, so I think the first book that was a big ebook that I wrote together with my wife. It was all cast out of the transformation that I wanted to make, because what I saw with a lot of companies when we were trying to implement growth hacking over there, it sounded nice, but it was really hard to again make that connection between the owners and the teams and what they were doing. And there was a thing that I was seeing, is that in a lot of cases, there were only a few things that really mattered. And what I saw is in the engagement where I was really successful is those were the engagements where I was able to challenge the team to really dig down to, okay, where are we focusing on? And based on what we were focusing on, what's really the one thing that really matters? That's if there only was one thing we could do, what would make all the impact? And I saw that if we were able to focus the teams on those issues, that growth would go up and actually the velocity would increase. So more experiments, and actually everything went better. And we have the theory of growth hacks, but I saw also with growth hacks is that they are more like channel focused and they don't make the holistic connection. So what we did in that book is we tried to figure out, can we do the Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, and do that in a really aggressive way. And if you do that in an aggressive way, you'll see that less than 1% of what you do actually makes more than 50% of the impact. And this is just a natural law. And what I've seen is that it takes some thinking exercise, but the moment you get there and see, okay, what's the 1% that really makes all the difference? If you just double down on that, you will have a disproportionate return on what you can achieve. So we created a process on how you can find your growth lever. But we also wanted to figure out, are there growth levers that you could say that are evergreen, that could work in every company? Yeah. And so we figured out, okay, there are 3 growth levers where we think you should double down on. And the first one is the Dream 100. It's a very good framework from another book from .com Secrets. And what you do is you want to find the 100 places where your ideal customers is congregating, but also how can you build relationships with those community owners to get there, to get in front of those audiences, because the principle that you want to leverage is there is somebody else who already has social proof with your audience. And if you can leverage that social proof, you'll have a disproportionate return on what you're doing. So also with my new activities, I'm constantly thinking, who is the person that already has authority, credibility with that group, and how can I leverage that?
And we see also, Chris, that it's also depending on if there are data analysts or data scientists in-house. Does it has some kind of different level of knowledge for you as a starting point from, let's say, a 0 point that you see, hey, if there are more data scientists, we can moving faster, scale up faster than data analysts. Do you see this?
Well, you have to think about the context where it's logical that data scientists are there compared to a context where there are only data analysts. You're pretty stupid if you hire data scientists if you don't have the infrastructure in place where they can do cool stuff with your data. So I think the context where you have data scientists in place, probably there's more possible. There's a higher volume of data, but a thing that I see a lot is that the principle of, as we say in Dutch, because of the trees you don't see the forest anymore. Yeah. And I think that's what you see in those instances. So I'm working with a client right now. They have an entire data science team, but they still struggle to get 3 experiments live per week. So it's you need to do things in the right order. And that's also a thing that I did with the previous book, is to focus on like, what are the 3 growth levers? So the Dream 100, the value ladder. So guiding people through your entire value chain. So can you get them in at a low point? It's like, can you get them to date with you, but actually start with a paying relationship? Because what I've seen is that if a customer actually has paid you, it's a different dynamic, because you're doing customer success instead of constantly selling to somebody. And if somebody already paid you, chances are really high they will pay again. So that concept of value ladder is a really important one. Understanding front-end revenue and back-end revenue. So how much money do you make on the first sale versus how are you able to monetize that relationship afterwards? And I have cases where I analyzed different value ladders, and I saw that a lot of companies were able to 7x the amount of money they would make on a customer within the first 60 days by having a value ladder in place. So I think this is a really strategic concept, which is different than a hack.
A value ladder is like a copywriting. What is a value ladder, Chris?
So basically, it's like you have to see it as a ladder. So different steps. The first step is a relatively low price and low value. Right. And the next step is higher value with a higher price. So I think where I saw it in practice is the context where I bought a productivity course and I paid $147 for that. The step after that was a course on how to do consulting to earn 1K per month. And that has a different value proposition. So I actually also paid $1,000 for that. And then the step afterwards was how to become a six-figure consultant, so making more than 100K per year as a consultant, and I actually invested 7.5K for that. So you see different steps with different values and different prices. And the key thing you want to do is to guide customers and clients strategically through these steps, because then you can really earn a lot of money on the relationship, or as they would say, earn money on the back end. And the third growth lever that we described in the book was the concept of the revenue stress test. So what I see in a lot of companies is that they actually don't grow because their infrastructure can't handle it. So the question to see where the biggest bottlenecks are within your infrastructure is to ask yourself the question, and I learned this from a former McKinsey consultant, is what if we would have 10 times the amount of customers that we have today, we would have tomorrow in front of us? What would break? Because if you can proactively solve those bottlenecks, then actually growth will become easier. And what I've done in the past months in the different consultants engagements that I was doing with different clients is taking these three concepts, so the Dream 100, the value ladder, and the revenue stress test, to make growth more predictable, easier, and actually generate more impact with them.
Very good. Very interesting. I see this a lot also at startups, Chris, that they build a house. Let's say they build a house with not the right fundament, and especially when they have like the customers they dream of, they can handle it, or it will break, or there are too many bugs, and they have to rebuild the house again. So that's really, I think, a really strong a sentence from you to make sure. Be ready for what you are dreaming of, the big customer amount. So that's really important. Definitely true. Carlos, I think it's also interesting to understand the new book of Chris.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
So please tell us, Chris. I think we're really excited about this, and not only us, but also our network. So please tell us more about your upcoming release.
Yeah, cool. So I think the biggest promise of that book is that we're going to help to quickly monetize the biggest business opportunity in front of you. And especially in a fast changing world where there are a lot of short windows of opportunity, which you can really exploit. There are a lot of chances out there. But we have seen that, of course, because of that disconnect between executives and teams and how companies are set up, they're not able to really monetize those things. So what I'm doing, and as I said, I'm still in the writing process, so things can still change. But the big philosophy is that we want to build an evergreen model where we find what are the steps that people need to take to make sure that for now and in the coming years, they have a model they can use, which answer the question, how can I monetize this opportunity in front of me? And we take principles from growth hacking, principles from strategy consulting, from different worlds, and combine it into an evergreen model, which I've coined as the wallet method, because you want to quickly get the money into your wallet, of course. Yep. And that stands for different acronyms like work once and get paid forever, access accelerates growth, leverage a lifetime value ladder, and these type of things. And it's a model which will step by step help you to build machines where if you put money in, they will predictably return you a return on investment. But it will also enable you to look into your business in a modular way, where when the world changes, you know how you can reshape the different pieces to be ready for that new context. And the biggest difference between growth hacking and my book is that growth hacking is all about high tempo testing around the entire customer journey. Well, I'm going to take it a level higher, and I'm going to use the principles to be able to reinvent yourself into a higher pace. So it's all about a higher tempo of reinventions. So you're ready for the opportunity that's in front of you.
Great, really great.
Chris, do you also currently work with any retailers and or brands or the like?
Yeah, so I work with different companies who, of course, have the challenge to take the physical products that they have, because that's a thing that you see with a lot of retailers. They have different products on the shelf, and they need to be sold. And in this new world, the entire dynamics have changed, of course. So a thing that I'm doing in my new book is I'm going to introduce a next level value ladder which I call a touch-based value ladder, where in a lot of retail context, you have the thing of human touch. So you have like a salesperson coming to you and telling you, advising you. And what we have seen with digital transformation and go to e-commerce is that a lot of companies make the mistakes of digitizing everything. Well, the key thing is that you need to understand how human touch adds to great conversions, how digital touch add to that, and find the perfect mix based on where people are on their value chain. So if they are low in the value chain or on the value ladder, make sure that with a lot of digital touches, you're able to convert them. But when you're more upscale and you're selling furniture, for example, or more expensive stuff, then human touch can be the next level. And what you also see is that in a lot of industries, they will transform from a lot of human touch to more and more digital touch. And with the model that I'm building right now, I want to give people a framework where they can find the most ROI returning combination of the human touch and digital touch.
Yeah, I agree. I think like when we look at, because I think for so many years we've been listening about customer acquisition, and I think at least in retail, what I've been learning on this podcast is that people are trying to, let's say, crack the nut on customer retention, right? And I think at the end of the day, like when you look at, for example, I love how KLM, their customer service. So because it's so frictionless, like they serve me. I use WhatsApp because it's huge in Brazil. So they ask me, hey, how would you like to receive your flight ticket? So it could be via email, it could be via WhatsApp or WeChat nowadays, or whatnot, right? So I think it's even though you see that there's a level of automation there, they make sure to serve you as a customer where you are, and by doing so, because there are so many digital touch points nowadays, right? They make sure that they are present in my life, in a smooth way. I want to dig in a little bit on and it doesn't have to be retail only, Chris, because I think you see a lot of mistakes. So do you think people are trying to automate still a lot of stuff? Like your customers, they're looking for like the silver bullet when it comes to growth. How do you see that?
So what I see is that companies automate the wrong things at the wrong time, mostly. And what do I mean with that? Is that there are a lot of repetitive tasks that take them a lot of time, that cost them money, and they are too lazy to automate that. So they're not automating that. Mm-hmm. And at the other end, they are automating customer service or other customer-facing things where they actually have to crack the code on why it's working.
Right.
So they're just like sending automations, and then a customer is like, yeah, this is a chatbot, but it's not fulfilling my need. Well, it would be smarter to, in their backend, to maybe automate stuff. Well, to give them more space and leverage on customer-facing in customer-facing context, because that's where you generate the most value. And I think, as you said, like the moment that you as a customer feel really served and you feel valued, that value has to return back into quantifiable value for a company.
Absolutely, yeah. And it doesn't have to be like KLM, they were not my first company of choice. I've always used British Airways, but last year I was working a lot in the Netherlands, and so obviously I started using more KLM, and then I noticed I was like, wow, this is great, like every time they're asking me this, it's a small thing, but it makes a lot of difference for me because of WhatsApp and because they're there when I need them. Actually, one time I got a bit annoyed, pissed off with their service. And so I posted on LinkedIn. And what was really, really cool was that their head of customer experience, he replied to me and say, hey, man, we're going to make sure so this is all human, right? And it's coming top down, which I think it has a lot to do with your book as well, to, like that guy understood my pain, and he made sure, like, of course, he wasn't sorting out my pain, but he made sure, that his team was going to sort out my pain as quickly as possible. And to me, that makes a big difference, because we're talking now, we're going to be impacting more people, and we're going to be talking about KLM. And I think people just don't.
The interesting question, sorry to interrupt you, but did you see his face, or was it his profile who told you it was him?
It was actually on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
So that was because I made sure to tag the whole leadership and say, hey, this is not acceptable. So once and that's the other thing. I mean, we as customers, we have so much power, in our hands, that the companies, they are concerned as well, right? So at least a company as big as, let's say, KLM or Air France, which now it's a joint venture, like whatever you do, like they have departments just, screening what's going on and who's talking about them and stuff like that. So, but on that specific case, I thought that was very, very cool. And, I take my hats to KLM, because I think they acted very quickly, and they treated me as a human, which is what we want, right? At the end of the day. So very cool, very cool. Lee, do you have other questions regarding, what you're doing, and maybe you have?
So basically, it's really interesting to see how companies are trying to reach the customers to make sure they have engagement or re-engagement with the customers or audience during this COVID-19 situations. Offline stores are having huge difficulties to understand how to change their environment so rapidly to online. Chris, so Carlos also mentioned about, like KLM, conversational chat, conversational marketing. What are your thoughts about this in combination with the third-party restrictions in 2022, as an example, by Google? Do you see opportunities for those companies in this fast, rapidly changing market with all these restrictions? How do you look at it?
So I think what I always try to do is look back at the principles that are timeless. So what's a strategy that would work right now, but also in the coming years? And I think from a marketing and sales perspective is that what are these platforms doing? They are restricting access to your customer. So what do you need to do? You need to find a channel where you own the relationship with the customer. And quite frankly, you need to get their email address with their opt-in, or you need to give an opt-in for WhatsApp or for even phone calls, because like if third parties are restricting that, and this is something I do with all my clients, and this is also something that I discuss in the book, like access enables growth, and access is also making it cheap or expensive. And if a third party has access to your customer, that means every time you want to interact, you have to pay for it.
Yeah.
But if you have the access, then it's the economics are way better. So try to get their email address by adding value, their contact details. Make sure you can DM them on platforms that can't shut you down, but where you have full control over that journey.
For example, I know that's, for me, that's basic, like email, right? And there's even a study saying that people change less their email, like compared with their phone numbers. I think they change more. Can you talk about also the ownership of the channel and how do you see that?
Yeah, I think it's a thing. People will change their phone numbers and their email addresses. So you have to accept that you will lose access to a certain percentage of your base all the time.
Sure.
So I think that's just a given thing. But I think the economical value that you can generate out of having that access is way higher, because what you can do is like you can do customer success management. You can enable a customer journey where you add so much value that the next time they are looking for a solution that you can provide, or that you know somebody who can help them, you will be the first one that they'll think about. So I'm a really big fan of, once you have access to a customer, to make sure that you treat them in a good way, that they won't churn. Because they feel taken care of. And I also have examples in my book where somebody actually gets access to a customer base by selling their software, and they actually make €0 on the software, but they're monetizing the relationship through affiliate deals where they promote the best things. So there are also kind of economics on how you build up the access and then how you can monetize it on the back end.
So basically what I see in the last years, let's say 5 to 10 years, is that every company tries to be relevant, right, to their customers, try to be to use personalization, hyper personalization, you can name it. But what I've noticed is in common e-commerce, as an example, every order is confirmed by email, as an example, like most of the orders. And I think what's really important is that we should centralize the customer, so customer first. So the customer should actually opt in for the right channel. Let's say WhatsApp, maybe in Brazil, like what Carlos said, or email, or SMS, or social. And I think that we are really going towards this direction, that the customer choose the channel where they will receive the notification, communication, marketing, and so on. What do you think about this, Chris?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a trend that will probably happen. And then what's interesting to analyze is what's the foundation that you need to build to enable that. And that's your data structure that you have in place. And I think that's one of the new concepts that I'm going to introduce with my book is, as I'm coming from a financial background, from accounting and controlling, like we have been trained in how to capture data and how to make sure that you have quality data and you can actually make sound decisions based on that. So I think the big Trojan horse that you will see in the coming years is that people from the finance side, because of their data knowledge and capabilities, will add disproportionate value in guiding this transformation and enabling other departments to set out these type of strategies. But then it's important that those people actually also learn what's possible with this data, because only having the data is not enough, or knowing which type of strategies you need to do without data is also not enough. We need to bridge that gap with teaching financial people and developers like what they can build, where marketing and salespeople can leverage that, but also how they can communicate together to really get the most out of that.
Clear. Great. No, so I think it's really exciting to release to see the release of your book. I already have a lot of people in my mind, in my network, that I would like to give it as a gift, even because, as you say, it's really difficult for a lot of companies in a fast moving world to change departments, to understand data structure, and then really make sure that every island in the company is connecting. And from that on, just testing, understanding how to grow. Yeah, really exciting for your release, Chris.
Cool. Yeah, and I know one thing that will happen is that once the book is launched, 6 months or 12 months after that, I will look at it and be like, oh shit, I missed that, or that's out of date. So I know that it's a model that's together with people that will invest in the book and all the courses and everything that is around it. Like we will shape the direction together, and that's what I see as my role, as facilitating and helping to find that right journey. And I know that I will probably be wrong in some things with the model, but I also know that there will probably be one thing in the model where right now I think that's not going to matter, which will actually be a big game changer for a lot of companies.
Yes.
Chris, there was one thing that you spoke about, and we'll wrap up real soon because I know your time is very valuable. But you were talking about financial people understanding more of marketing and probably more, or going more towards marketing. I'd like to pick your brain a little bit on the future of jobs in that sense, because we see some really interesting studies on, for example, McKinsey or Deloitte talking about, if there is so much automation, there's going to be a lot of people out of jobs and so on, but also the importance of reskilling, especially in Europe. I've been doing this in Brazil, so it's quite interesting to see where the markets are. But where do you see, this jobs changing, and or how has your job changed over the past few years? What have you been, following within the companies that you're working with? What are the main transformations? I spoke to a futurist, and we spoke about new jobs that are coming in 2030, right? That are not even here and stuff like that. So I'd like to pick your brain on the transformations that you're seeing within the companies you're working for and with, and the future of jobs.
Yeah, no, I think it's a very interesting question, and a company that has been a competitor, or as how you could phrase it, growth tribe in our space, has released a very nice report on that a couple of weeks ago. And what you see over there is what will be the skill that will make the most impact in the coming 2 or 3 years are actually data skills. So that's also triggered something with me, like, hey, financials can already do that, but they are not making, they're not crossing the gap. They're not creating that bridge. So that was also one of the big triggers for my book, where I was like, hey, I need to do that. And I think that what you see in a lot of cases is that people they go to college, for example, university, and then they have a job and they stay in that area for years and years and years. And that's, in the old world, that was working. Like, I'm trained as an auditor. If 10 years ago you would tell me, like, Chris, in 10 years, you'll be an international expert on growth hacking, which, by the way, is a field that doesn't exist yet, then probably everybody would say, like, that's crazy. But the thing that I've always been focusing on, and that's a concept that I read in the book, The $100 Startup, is the concept of transferable skills.
Yeah.
So what can you learn today that you can take that skill and have its value in the next job that you're gonna take. So like copywriting, sales, negotiation, like these are skills that once you learn that right now, they will pay for the rest of your lifetime. So I was always really focused on what can I learn today that will pay for the rest of my life. And how can I stack those skills on top of each other? So that stacking mindset. And that's really a big philosophy from the book, like work once and get paid forever. I think that also really relates to transferable skills. So build a skill once and let it pay for the rest of your life.
Awesome. Yeah. I think this is a really, really nice way to call this off. But yeah, I've been working in international sales and business development for a long time, and so I decided to create like a LinkedIn course. And so the info product world, which I find it really, really interesting, because that's what you're saying, like getting paid, kind of. It's a lot of work that you have to put into this info product things. But I realized that I had no knowledge of Facebook marketing, and so that kind of stuff. I think if people are in sales and if they don't understand Facebook today, and I'm talking today, I think they're toast. But within 5 years' time, they're even more screwed. You know what I mean? Because a lot of stuff that's happening on Facebook, or understanding how at least the machine works, then you understand the marketing, the marketer, right? And the same for the marketer, because the marketer needs to understand, the pains of like the people in the trenches and stuff like that. So that's really interesting what you're saying. Just wanted to say that.
So if you take that example and you want to drill it down to the first principle, so what are the principles that will stay the same or will never change? Is Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, they're all algorithms. So you need to understand how the algorithm works. And that algorithm is all about serving people to get their attention. And then the algorithm wants you to do something with that. And that's what you do based on the principles from direct response copywriting. So I believe if you understand how an algorithm works and you understand the principles on persuasion architecture and direct response copywriting, like you can get better and better on that over time. And the platforms can change, but the principles on how to monetize those platforms, how to get the most out of it, those will never change.
Awesome, man. I think that's a really nice way to call this off. So Chris, I'm sure we're going to do a follow-up session on this, and just wanted to say thank you very much. Sorry if I was a little slow today. I just came back from Brazil, so learning English again.
No worries. It was great. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, Lee.
Yes, Chris. Just one question besides this interview. So if you promote your book, the release, please let me know also, what we can do to make sure our network can profit from your knowledge and your vision from your book. Because I think it's really interesting the way you think and the way you explain in normal language, right? For people in companies from different departments, how to think about changing the structure based on data, etc., etc. So I think it's really interesting. So please let me know because I really would like to promote this also to my network.
Cool. So really appreciate that. Thanks.
Yes.
Yeah, no, and Chris, if people want to, find out more about you, what is it that they can do today? I'm sure I'm also going to publish this on LinkedIn and stuff like that. Yeah. I'm going to make a small post about our conversation, but can you just leave your contacts and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I always like to connect with people on LinkedIn. So you can find me at Chris Out. And if they go to my website, chrisout.com, they can download the Growth Lever cheat sheet, which was my first book. And I think that if they download that for now, that has already a lot of value in place, and people will also be updated on what's coming next.
Great.
Fantastic. All right, Chris. So thanks very much. Thanks, Lee.
Thanks,
great.
Chris.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks. Cheers.